you're a home buyer, somebody or a young person looking to buy a home, you need a bit of a reset.
There is a possibility on the other side of this that inflation could actually be quite low.
Today we have Jared Jones with us to talk about the housing market. And if you guys already don't know who Jared is, not only is he an absolute expert when it comes to real estate, not only does he have decades of experience on relos, REOs, and things of that nature, he also has a YouTube channel. He's based out of Florida. Come to his YouTube channel if you guys want more perspective from Jared, especially if you guys live in the Florida area. I mean, brother, your videos are blowing up, and they're blowing up for a reason. The reason, Jared, is because you're telling the truth. You're telling the truth, and I appreciate that, man. And thank you for being with us today. Before I start, on the questions and bombarding you with those, do you have any opening that you would like to say? Anything you'd like to start with?
Honestly, man, I've probably been active at YouTube in the level of kind of what we've been doing lately for maybe a year and a half. And I got to say, shout out to you. And I mean, honestly, having me on, I was watching your content before I was at 1,000 followers, 1,000 subscribers online. So it's super cool to actually be, chatting with you online as well, because I've been respecting your work for a long time. And I feel like we're kindred spirits in that, we're going to come on and we're going to really kind of say things from a heart of trying to help people. And talking to you when it's just the two of us, I get it's a very, it's not just a presentation of how you are on your own channel. You're actually real in that you're actually here for people. You're trying to sound the alarms for people, trying to help others. So it's really awesome to be talking to you in person. So
I appreciate that, man. The thing with YouTube is because the viewers aren't stupid. I feel like the viewers of YouTube are like 2 stages ahead of most consumers. But dude, if you lie, if you don't, in my opinion, if you don't talk with your heart, I mean, they can see it. They see it right away. I mean, I see it all over YouTube. So, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on. I know you're also a realtor, but you're also sounding the alarm. And before we kind of dig into what's going on in Florida, and there's a lot to dig into, just for the people that don't know, Jared, can you tell the viewers a little bit about your background and your experience in real estate?
Sure. Yeah, I actually became real estate licensed in 2001. So as I'm young for this industry. I think the average age is in they're 50 something for a realtor. And I was actually started in the business at around 21 years of age. So, I was, through the first financial collapse, I was really kind of cutting my teeth in the business. I think that a lot of us that worked like yourself through that cycle, we're doing our best to try and analyze the world as we see it today and not constantly feel like we're having alarms go off that this is the same or things of that nature. But I will tell you, that is a concern. You look at the marketplace. I have milestone moments in the, coming into 2006 where I kind of was really shocked by what people were paying at that time. And so it's a good vantage point coming into the market as it is. But over that period of time, I was actually starting my career, not here in Florida, but actually in Las Vegas. And so Vegas, like California, like, Arizona, many of these marketplaces all were ground zero for what took place in 2008 all the way to 12. And early on in Las Vegas, where I started my career, I actually got picked up by some of the largest financial institutions in the country in 09, 10, 11, and ended up selling probably around 2,000 bank-owned properties through that down cycle, a whole lot of short sales, doing my best to kind of help people get through that last nightmare, and was on the front lines of that effort. And, Vegas was hit so hard that it nearly killed me. I mean, we were working, nonstop for multiple years, so, with that, in every year since, I mean, usually I'm a top producing agent, but I've also flipped probably 200 plus homes in my real estate career. There's a lot of properties that come across that people just don't want to put on the market. And, before Open Door, there was always those opportunities. So done a lot of that. So I got a lot of time in, brief stint as a mortgage officer, but probably less than 2 years and not much to speak of, but understand finance to a degree. So got a lot of experience from, asset management from the bank owned side all the way to, what we're seeing now, and have been fully exposed to real estate full time for, 22 years now. So, got a lot of experience, and it's kind of where I speak from.
Well, I think what I like about your experience the most, Jared, is that it was during the GFC. It was during
Sure.
the, one of the hard times to get into real estate. And basically,
Yep.
just to reiterate your experience, I mean, you have a tremendous amount of experience selling property that it's an REO, was taken back from the lender, whether it was, they signed away the property, the foreclosure process, but you
For
saw
sure.
what it was like in a market, Las Vegas, one of the worst markets in the nation. And so you saw the blood in the streets, you felt the depression, you saw the hopelessness in the consumer's eyes. And so now,
Yep.
fast forward to today, do you see, do you see any data right now or any warning signs of, 2024 where it kind of looks like, hey, the market's a bit top heavy, this thing's going to crash. But before I do that, I forgot. I always got to start with one question. Shame on me, man.
No
I've been
worries.
sick for, I've been sick for a little bit. One of the things I
No, that's
don't
okay.
like, being in the real estate industry, especially for so long as I have, is how people use the crash narrative and they flip flop with it just to increase their sales, increase their lead generation. So I always like
Mhm.
to start by showing my viewers like who we're talking to. So, Jared, just to the best of your ability, will you explain and describe your own personal definition of what a housing market crash is?
Crash I mean, the simplistic way of looking at it is where you have really such diminished demand that you're not able to absorb the inventory fast enough that results in basically sellers doing high levels of price reduction, high price erosion in order to exit the market. So essentially price crashing usually comes with it some degree of a percentage. Okay. I think if you ask 80% of everybody that's in real estate, they'd probably come around 20%. So I think if most people said, hey, if you saw price shift 20% in a short period of time too, you got to understand, a lot of us are really, I think most people are in a hurry. I think most people don't understand the patience of a market cycle. And ultimately, even the last GFC, it took really that big pattern was 2007 to 2012. I mean, it was a kind of a continuous death by 1,000 cuts. It wasn't overnight. I think a lot of people kind of expect that. But, as far as crash is concerned, crash does not need, you do not need, in my mind, months and months and months and months of supply that we saw in 2010, 11, and 12, meaning there was so much deep depth of competing owners in any given neighborhood in some of these hard hit markets that those coming into it were faced with really bad odds. They were really, every single sale that actually hit the exit ended up having a much lower and lower sale price. So you got to understand, like, it doesn't necessarily need, in my mind, that level of inventory. All that you do need is actually diminished disinterest, unaffordability, or lack of capacity of your base of buyers, and you could have a market segment in trouble. And so, I will say the other thing I think that you're going to see in terms of crash, I think you're going to see markets in this new market cycle that we're about to see, right? Feels like I'm seeing more headlines recently saying odds of recession are increasing, things of that nature for this year. I think you're going to see markets affected more disproportionately than you saw in the GFC. The GFC was a more general softening and weakening of prices nearly everywhere. Okay, except for like some markets in like Texas, some Midwestern markets. But it's like, I think you have to understand that, like, there's been recessions, there's been really big dips in price in different markets throughout the country, even before the pandemic. Like, you've had down cycles in like San Francisco, some of these marketplaces, and they were just micro. They were specific areas. They weren't economy wide. So I think one thing we need to also think about is look at your markets. Like, there's marketplaces in some of the hottest areas of the country. I think about short-term rental markets in my area, and they're getting hammered. Yet Orlando or Central Florida, at large, you can throw Tampa in the bucket. They're still reporting phenomenal activity, and most buyers, depending on which bracket they're buying in or which market they're trying to pierce, are seeing completely different stories and different outcomes in terms of how prices, dropping, or it's being sustained or going, maybe possibly going higher. So I think, which is important. I think that's why YouTube, and particularly channels like ours, tend to take more attention because people know that you literally can't take a narrative of this entire market that I'm in is okay, because that's not true. There are little potholes and landmines. Some of them aren't little, but they could be segments that you could step into and find yourself, completely in a bad position from where you enter a price at a number you should not, And so, a lot of us that have these kinds of channels, we're sitting there saying, look, if you're going to enter the market now, do a ton of research, because there's weird disparate realities, if I could say it. It's like there's different spots that it's like they're traps. It's like you walk through the jungle and you get the Vietnam idea or whatever of like there's these holes dug and you can't see them, and you're right in and you think everything's fine. This area's been canvassed, it's safe. And I think you cannot play the market that way in this economy that we're in 2024.
Okay. So I mean that was a very interesting answer. I just did a collab, and the thing that he thinks is impacting the market the most is the opposite of you, but yet you both have very great points. But if I could push you against the corner real quick, you didn't confirm 20. Do you consider 20% as far as percentage of price drop? Is that something that you're considering a price crash, or because you said that 80% of the realtors, but are you sharing that view? Mine is different. I'm just curious yours.
Yeah, I think 20 to 30% I don't think I've ever thought about a specific number on what I consider a crash. I would say I hold a similar view when you have like a 20 to 30% deflation all at once, because that is humongous problems for your economy. Like when you slip that far, you got to understand people going back many years now are in all likelihood underwater, right? So then you have the likelihood of more distressed real estate, the more likelihood of higher people just getting hung. Those are the pitfalls. Go ahead.
But Jared, what's interesting is talking about deflation. I mean, it doesn't really have to happen overnight. I mean, look at, you just mentioned yourself, it went from 2008 to 2012. It took 4 or 5 years. And what's crazy, Jared, when I look at the numbers, looking at how much the prices go down during the GFC, median went down 19%.
Right.
Average went down 20, new homes went down 21. So then the argument is made, well, this time it needs to go down more because the bubble is bigger and done in half the time. So it's very, very, very interesting. Now, also what you said, really, really super interesting. You basically said, in order for a crash to kind of happen, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you want to see demand dead even more. You're saying that basically the sentiment, right? The mindset of people is stronger than the lack of inventory. And I just want to point out, that's the first time anyone's ever said that to me. And if we look back to the deflation that happened towards the middle of 2022 into 2023, that's exactly what happened. Because we didn't have inventory go up barely. I mean, we didn't have it going up, but we have more inventory now. It was the sentiment. Right. It was the mindset that was different. That's I like that. Sentiment.
Limitations too. Limitations. I mean, so like, if you look at history in most of these major markets, usually you look back 10, 15 years, any marketplace in America, you probably can go further than this. That's as far as I can get data on. Usually you have your cost to buy a home and your cost to rent, your cost to purchase a house is usually running 15%, some kind of distance beneath what it costs to rent. In people's mind, like they really think, and this is a history lesson, right? That like what I can rent a house for is really what it's worth. So now you have someone enter the market, and I've kind of told this story even on my channel, is that, my position, and I live by my position, is we're at the top of the market. Okay. So we're at a market top. Okay. So what I believe, when you look at in the history of time past now, the future is not a even higher price. Okay. From here. Okay. That's important because whether we like it or not, some people don't want to throw housing, and particularly the home you live in, is in the investment bucket, and some do. The point is, like, you need to make good decisions on that reality, right? Yeah. And so if that is true, you do not buy a house with a short-term ownership plan to live in.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's financial suicide right now. But going back real quick, Jared, I want to go back because you covered a lot when you first started with that answer. So the thing that you said as well, going back to the crash, you made a point, and I love this point, and this is to add to your point, that we don't need hyper supply like we had during the GFC to have prices go down. We know that. We know we don't need that. And the thing is, interesting, Jared. To add to your point here, we have, the last I looked anyways, and this is from Black Knight. Okay, so this is my data source, Black Knight. We only have 3 top metros. There's probably little small ones, but we have 3 top that have more inventory than they did pre-COVID, right? So now we're at pre-COVID levels. It's Florida. I think it's was it Lakefront, Florida, or Ocean View, Florida, and then the second one, San Francisco. Third one, Austin. Guess what, man? Each of those is down year over year, and Austin is down a lot. And San Francisco, if we look at peak to trough median, that's down 26%.
Right
now. Just to add to what you're saying, when we have the inventory and we don't need a lot, and we hear a narrative like, "Oh, we need 4 million," Jared, are we short 4 million homes?
If we are, you're gonna have a bloodbath in multifamily because you've just built all the apartments for these people. I mean, like we have 400,000 or 500,000 apartments being completed a year right now. So again, I don't want to shift channels too fast because the real premise, and here's the problem. If you look at the GFC's run up in price and you look at it was like 2.5 years in this last cycle to run prices up 80%, 90% in my market. Okay. So last time it took 4.5, 5 years to run price. Get to understand, like what we did this time was not natural increase of productivity makes everybody more money, makes everybody go spend. All that happened is there was tons of supply, which I don't need to talk history. Everybody knows we had money just infuse our system, prices go up. Okay, so you do not have an increased natural productivity to sustain us to the next hill, right? So we went up 80%. Everybody that's out there saying this time is different, this time is different, you have to sit here and argue that now all the burger flippers and all the Chipotle bowl makers and all these other that are making 18 and 19 and 20 an hour is going to go up to 22 and 23. And all the economy is going to progress from here. It's not natural. It blew out of the ground in 2.5 years. And what that has culminated in is a hyper crisis in affordability. That's why we don't even have to hope demand is lower. We already know it. When you had statistically in 2023, we reported the lowest amount of sale off in like 30 years. Listen, you've got less buyers in the market playing the game than you did in 9, 10, 11. Okay. Yeah. That's the thing
about that.
It's like, you had a higher inventory back then, but you had people actually still coming out to buy it. Why? Because prices shifted. So what's happening now and just, I'm playing from Florida. Okay. Florida, like you said, is interesting because while Lawrence Yun and all these guys, the economists, I'm mentioning the economists from National Association of Realtors for all of these who don't follow the real estate propaganda network. Basically, he comes out constantly and says, we're super short inventory. This is why we have less sales. And it's like, well, inventory is like in certain places up 20% over last year, yet sales are still down. In my market, inventory is up 30% in Florida after it went up 40 or 50% on the year before that. So it's like, when do you start to talk about buyers can't do it anymore? Like it's just absolute limit capacity. At the same time, folks, in a lot of these markets where unaffordability is record off, means when you get to markets where they aren't used to paying 9 and 10x annual income for a house, like your income, what you annually make versus what your price is. If your marketplace is used to paying 5x and now you're at 9x in matter of, because it went up 2-3 years, everybody's an apartment dweller, man. Like everybody. That's why, like, I just saw a report in the last 3 days. I haven't even put it on my channel yet. It's like Florida has multiple markets that had the hottest apartment demand in the country. And that's because our locals can't afford to buy anymore. And honestly, so like what's happening is we're coming out of this free and easy money cycle. A lot of markets have run out of juice. Like the juice is over. Texas, just like you mentioned, San Francisco, Florida is out of juice. Florida has a myriad of background concerns that are going to cause it major issues in the next 2 years. So I'm not saying that for views, but I'm telling you, Florida has run the leadership position for 9 years. Going back to 2015, we have run the leadership position on how many people we can attract who can sell their $1 million townhome, brownstone in the Bronx, all these different markets that are really expensive. We attract them here to get something that's more affordable.
So the unaffordability, Florida's not as desirable. We see the migration shifting to the Carolinas. I agree with you on the lack of sustainability. The demand was artificial. The price growth was artificial, but they want to normalize it. And I think they're out of their minds. And the craziest thing is how many people are sold on that idea. And I believe they're sold on the idea, not because of fundamentals, but because of insecurity to change. They want to be in that comfort bubble. Most young adults have never went through anything like this. Most young adults are being begged to work there. When I was a young adult, I had to beg for a job. And I didn't get it during the GFC. So talking about markets that can't sustain because there's literally no box for locals to buy. There's no buy box for locals. Jared, tell the viewers what you're seeing right now happen in the more higher price points, the $1 million price point. And then again, real quick for the viewers, Jared's in Florida. And before you answer that, the $1 million, tell them exactly where you're at in Florida, Jared.
I'm in the Central Florida market. So I'm dead middle of the Orlando metropolitan marketplace. We're an hour and a half away from Tampa, which is obviously well-known, hyper popular market. Florida is really, besides from a couple college towns and a lot of beach, Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, and Miami are the hot spots. I mean, that's where most of our business is done, outside of rural pockets and things in between. With our marketplace, the interesting thing that I'm noticing is that people that have purchased in the past 2 years, particularly in the upper middle range of, you call it the move up category and beyond, that marketplace is already shuttering. Okay. Luxury. And I wouldn't say it's luxury, but like a poor man's luxury, right? You have luxury, which is, NBA stars on. I'm talking about like most people have done well for themselves.
Like upper middle class, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. So
like 800,000.
Well, in Florida, that's probably 900 to maybe 2 million. Okay. So that has become a growing segment. And I don't even know I'd call it luxury anymore, because I'm looking at this. I'm like, $1 million homes, you have something in your mind and you see what you're seeing. You're going, this is just, this is a middle-class house from yesterday. So the point is, like, you're seeing homeowners. Okay. This is the interesting thing. You're seeing a lot of different homeowners that kind of bought in 21, 22, particularly 22. I'm not seeing it so much on 21 purchases, but you're seeing 22 in that, you're 22 all the way till now, 900 above that particular category. Seeing a lot of people relisting homes coming down below what they paid for it, or right on the margin of they're active and they're where they paid for it. And you can do the commission math and know, by the time they pay closing costs, they're coming out of pocket $80,000 at the title to sell the house. So you're seeing things kind of unraveling. And it kind of occurred to me. I said, you know what? Last time, if everybody had boatloads of equity at the GFC, there wouldn't have been as many foreclosures. People would have just cut their prices. This is what I'm seeing in Florida. I'm seeing people that paid $1 million, $1.5 million, all cash. Because here's the fascinating thing. I was selling a lot of real estate the last 2 or 3 years. I was doing less YouTube, more of that. And any of us that got offers accepted, here's how it worked. You had a listing on the market, 25 offers came in 19 hours or something. Then what would happen is maybe the top offer you had, which was $50,000 over the asking price, they're going to give you free vacations for 2 years. They waived everything. That offer might have been from a borrower with like 15% down. Well, then you went down the list, you had 6 cash offers behind them, and you said, hey, will you beat this guy at the front with a mortgage, right? So everybody across the country lined up sales for 2 years straight with maximum amount of cash on all those deals. So you got to understand that the secondary running narrative is everybody has equity, so there isn't market trauma. And I'm telling you, in my area, what's happening is the lives go on. People bought homes maybe in 2022, ill-advised, plans change. They're now not in the market anymore. Their $1.2 million house is on the market. I've seen houses in the past week, multiple ones, that are at or beneath what they paid, over time. Sometimes second, third listing agent before they finally realize, like, I'm taking it in the shorts. And that's the interesting thing, because people did wild things with cash, right? We're starting to realize, like, people just won the bid. They had the money, they had deep pockets, they didn't care. And in these, these market cycles, man, they affect people psychologically. People do things like, they factor things like they're going to be great forever, and they make bad buying decisions. And ultimately, like, we're seeing a lot of that. The opposite thing. So here's the thing. In our marketplace across Florida, where things are really sketchy, short-term rental markets are really in rough shape. Okay, so obviously I'm not far from the Mouse House. So Disney has a huge bed, particularly a base of short-term rental markets. Entire communities on top of communities on top of communities. Now you had about, I think it was like, I want to say it was 2022 in the spring, the marketplace, Fannie and Freddie, the major government-sponsored enterprises that affect finance, came back, tightened restrictions on how you get second home, and particularly second home or short-term rental purchasing money. They made it much more expensive for that particular bracket, diminished all the the demand for that, right? So everybody's running out of the free, easy stimulus money. They start making lending much more expensive. And now, we got multiple. I could go through market by market by market. You'll find years of available inventory, available supply in our short-term rental, and their prices are down.
I want to go back, man, because you're covering a lot of bases here, and I want to make sure to stop in between because it's very valuable what you're saying.
Got it.
And I want to tell the viewers this. So but it's basically on average, if you purchased after 2022. You probably don't have a lot of equity, especially if you consider the commission it takes to sell a house. If you purchase before 2022, you're probably sitting on a low interest rate and a lot of equity. But one thing that you reminded me of that I want to tell the viewers is you won the bid. So back in 2020 and in 2021, when we had massive equity buildup, remember, there's one thing you left out that buyers had to do. They had to purchase based on impulse and emotion. Because there are no fundamentals when you say go over the asking price, waive your contingencies, purchase a house online. There are no fundamentals in that. So a lot of the people, Jared, they just got lucky. And guess what? I can guarantee if they're impulse buyers, they're probably in credit card debt. They probably just bought a vehicle and they probably did not plan for property taxes, homeowners insurance to explode. And also, that hurts people that purchased before 2020, especially in Florida. Because you guys have a retirement community on fixed income. So those poor people that are barely scraping by on their fixed income now have to pay $1,000 more a year on insurance, $2,000 more a year on property taxes, yet their Social Security just finally barely went up. So you have all this artificial manipulation in demand, and that's probably why you led with demand. Demand is what leads to the crash. You kill demand, it's going to crash naturally. It's very good. But again, I wanted to point out the fact that 2020 and 2021, those weren't savvy buyers. Those were people that got lucky, that had to use their emotion and impulses to purchase. Let's not forget that. Very, very, very good point. And then also, I want to go into STRs real quick. STRs is short-term rentals, you guys, like Airbnb. Now, obviously, they came up with the debt service and coverage ratio loans to supersede some of that stuff. People are still buying STRs like crack addicts right now. But can you go into, Jared, like how, like you said the STR market's getting hammered. And that Disney has STR communities. Can you go into like a battle, what we see as far as a battle between Disney and like the short-term rental market?
Yeah. So Disney, so the volume of visitors that come into the area, Disney has, if anybody has never visited Orlando, Disney is like its own city. I mean, it is just it is literally. Yeah, size-wise, it's like a municipality. They run their own stuff. Obviously, they're fighting with the governor because he's pulling those rights away from them. But you have some ability for these local theme parks to actually house their own guests, but it's not even. It's a fraction of what actually visits here, because there's just so much to do in Florida. Most people are not just going to Disney World, but there's a big slice. Just south of the parks of Disney, it's a triangular shaped space that's really where you can own a house and rent it short term. You really can't do that for the municipalities themselves will stop you, not even the HOAs. I mean, it's governmental prevention in certain areas throughout our state. So you're buying in one pocket, and that particular pocket, you're seeing downward pressure on incomes. You're seeing upward pressure on cost to purchase. I talked to folks that were like, I haven't made money in a really long time. I haven't made money in a year and a half, 2 years. I'm losing money month over month. And the value dropped 10% in the past 9 months. So it's like these are recurring narratives of the short-term rental market, like right now, so you have, it's incredible that, I'm fascinated. I don't understand some of this. Short-term rental markets too in Florida kind of encompass those who are dedicated second home dwellers. So we do have, and that has been pointed out as like a huge risk for Florida because you have these huge, huge sections of short-term rental ownership. I think we're 11 to 14% range of our homes just sit vacant most of the year, part of the year. So we have a big slice of what you could call shadow inventory that is easy jettisoned in hard times, right? It's like that is gone. I'm going to work on paying my house in Michigan or wherever else they live, so, but as far as the Disney concern, and particularly South, I mean, I pull market after market. And as an example, you'll see a community that sells 3 homes a month like clockwork have 70 active homes for sale. 70 sellers that if they're losing money, times get tough, the rent's too much, the insurance is higher, then all of a sudden you're trying to compete with 69 other owners to be one of 3 to get out of the market. And then you see, I mean, I'm telling you, go community to community, you can see price sliding big. I mean, like multiple communities you could pull and find 9, 10, 12% slide in the past year.
It's not sustainable. I mean, it's not sustainable. I mean, it appears like it's been sustainable, but remember the stimulus, PPP, EIDL, and all this money. I mean, that's all unnatural. So Jared, let me kind of round us out. We've been talking for about 30 minutes. Let me ask you this question. Okay, so obviously there's investor demand getting hit, STRs are getting hit, but inventory is fairly low. There's people that still want to purchase. Florida is the second now, strongest pace of migration. Migration is incredibly powerful on localized housing markets. We see that in Boise, especially. Do you think, Jared, that Florida, on whole, the average will, by your definition of price crash, 20 to 30%, do you think on average Florida is going to crash in prices? Will they have a housing market crash?
It's a good question. I would say number one, I've predicted a price loss statewide this year. So I believe Florida is going to be negative. It was barely positive last year. We trended behind the national average in price growth. I think the national was, depending on what's record you looked at, was up 4%, something like that. We were like up 1.8 or 2. And so I think Florida is going to be down year over year on price. Again, these things take time, right? We are seeing transition now, and not to punt on the question, right? And I think people that, that are even on my channel, they get tired of hearing me mention the fact that we're somewhat in the hands of others in terms of central planners and federal, the Federal Reserve, particularly the banking system.
Yes.
Yeah. So like if things get bad, there might be bailouts, right? So when you try to predict things that should happen naturally, it's very hard to predict things that should happen naturally when there's a constant impediment to those things happening and unfolding. So, but I would say on the trajectory we're on, as I see it, we're at a place where we are seeing things stretch the max. As I mentioned, we have seriously endangered issues, markets already in trouble. Okay. So give you a backup view of this. Okay. The current narrative where even the country, if you look at the US, it was tepid last year. Sales were off. It didn't blow up in price. Yet, if you look at pre-pandemic level of active supply US wide, we're still like 40% below that. Okay. Across the US, Florida is only 10, 15% away from its pre-pandemic numbers. Mm-hmm. So you gotta understand, we are, when you talk about the gap US wide being 40%, still way, way beneath its running norms, we're much more closer to where there's a sense of oversupply in certain areas. So Florida isn't running like everybody else. This has kind of been my cry. It's like, hey, look, you got to be paying attention because Florida is going up in terms of its volume by leaps and bounds. And it's not because of new listing supply going so hard and heavy. It's just backing off of demand. Yeah. Buyers are out.
I mean, and honestly, I think we see that in the data, Jared. I just said like the 3 metro areas that have inventory at pre-COVID levels are all down year over year, every single one. And it's not even a lot of inventory. We didn't even have a lot of inventory pre-COVID. It's just we need to get back there. And by my calculations, we're down about 250,000 active units, not 4 million. I think that's absolutely crazy. But just to reiterate what you said, basically, you can see the Florida housing market crash overall if a few things happen. Number one, about 10 to 15% more inventory. It looks like that trajectory is there. And also number two, you see it going down this year over year. You're not sure how much. But the third thing is
I'd say 5%.
5%. So
I feel comfortable saying we'll probably lose 5% statewide
this year. All right. So 5% statewide on average, right? On average, some
Mhm.
places more, some places less, but on average 5%. But also what you're saying is we don't know what the heck the Fed is going to do next as far as bailouts. And look at where we're at right now because of the bailouts. So basically you're saying as long as they don't do nothing, it's going to crash on its own because there's
Right.
no fundamentals. But the big question is what will they do next to hurt us? I'm sorry. What will they do next to bail us? Is it us out or is it the bankers? Or who are they bailing out again? They're not bailing me out.
Yeah.
I'm paying more
Yeah.
ever since the bank term funding program, not less. So I like that answer. I think that's a good answer. You're in a tricky state. I'm also in a tricky state because I live in Texas. So I have the most new home construction and now the most migration. So I have these two massive factors like just battling it out. And so I've seen in a period of 4 months, 100 homes sold in a new subdivision. It's
That's
freaking nuts.
insane.
And then I've seen other subdivisions, they just sit there.
Which price category? Is this an entry buyer, a mid-range?
Under median. It's like median and under, dude. Like I'm at 2 to 400.
Can I give you an answer to your question without the Fed? So let me give you, okay, if there's minimal, so you imagine the market being a stream and there's minimal people throwing boulders in the stream and let it kind of, if it flows naturally, the way I see it is this. So a few moments ago, you made a passing comment. You said the people that were buying in the last 2 years were not savvy. And I don't think that's true. And I'm not splitting hairs. I'm not saying, I know what you're saying as you're saying it. So I get the energy behind it. But my thinking, I think it was people that probably on their own are very intelligent people that did well for themselves, that had the capital that they had, that suspended savviness, put it that way. So you had people with the means. So you understand what happened.
Yeah.
The whole time the market went up 80%, the people that didn't have a pot to piss in, my parents used to say, the poor people couldn't get in. Okay. You had a period of time for 2.5 years where people with median means, like just normal means. I'm saying the people, let's talk about the crowd that is not as smart. Let's talk about the low savvy. The people that scrounged to maybe save half their down payment, eventually got it all, but that's all they had. Those people couldn't buy the last 2 or 3 years. So you understand the people that were the most unsavvy, okay, among us, literally what we call, they don't know buying. They don't know how the market works. They don't have a lot of money. They've never really had, other than they made average income for the area. Those people couldn't get in. The people that were really that weren't savvy, literally not savvy, they were iced out. Now those people are coming in after the prices bounced 80%. And it's like, at this point, those that are savvy are going, they're not buying. They're stepping out of short-term rental markets. They're stepping out. Investors, who are they, stupid? No, a lot of them have brains and they have capital. Are they buying? No, they're out. Who is in? The people that got cut from the exits are now who's in the market now. This is a sad thing. That's why if you look at down payment percentages from the hype market, down payments were ridiculously high. People putting crazy money on houses. Percentage of cash purchases were crazy high during that cycle because the people with means were getting in. They ran the price was then run up. Again, this isn't a rich versus poor thing. That's going to be fodder for the comments. But the point I'm making is this: those people are not on the game. That's why you're seeing down payment percentages. They're going down. They're not the amount of people, right? Because people are finally getting their FHA 3% down offers approved, right? Those are who's left. The people that scrounge everything, that are the people that are buying now. You're having way more people that are now purchasing since 22. When you do not have the run up in safety of a fast appreciating market, if you make a bad buying decision, you come back a year later, you can't sell the house, you're underwater. The people that are now picking up the change, since this is a scary thing, they don't have the chips in the game. And they're also the same people that if life tips their apple cart a little bit, they're screwed. There's not a big emergency fund. They never started that way. Okay. So that is the culmination of what's happening now. So the answer to playing the market out right now is the upper piece where the people that have moving capital house to house, that well is drying up. We're starting to see that in the upper middle range, the luxury range. And again, the uber wealthy still going to trade. They're going to trade even the market collapses, right? Jeff Bezos is going to buy his next property no matter what.
Well, they don't have Jared. And let me go back real quick. You say so many good things, man. I try to just shut up. It's just so hard with you because you're just making so many good points.
Just stop me, because I will.
No.
Yeah.
It takes someone of your experience to be able to fathom these types of responses. So I'm really happy, but I need to take a step back. The word that I used was lucky, first of all, but you could say savvy. Okay, so we'll say savvy. What I chose was lucky, but I do also believe that a lot of those people that did purchase that time, they looked better than they were because these fake all cash offers, number one. Number two, they borrowed a tremendous amount of money from their parents, the boomers, depending on if they're boomers or not. So you have all these things, but also what's interesting is, and I hear what your point is, but we just got data out right before I did this podcast that said fourth quarter of 2023 had the highest investor demand for affordable housing. This came out today. So it's like the crazy thing, because first of all, what you're saying, Jared,
why though?
It all makes sense what you're saying.
That's
but
why.
The thing that's
where the
crazy
buyers are.
But listen, the thing that's hard about this housing market is we've never had a housing market that was so artificially manipulated to the extent it has been for the past 3 years. We got all of this warning right here. But then we look at this other section, it's just like, what the hell? It's saying the exact opposite. So what my point in telling you all this, Jared, if me and you, who've been doing this for 20 years successfully, we've gone through the GFC. If you and I are struggling to kind of get a good read on the entire market, look at what how could a consumer have savvy? How could a consumer have savvy? We don't know what data to look at, right? So that was the point that I was trying to make. A couple of things that you say, I think is absolutely go ahead.
The full answer to the economy being naturally settling on its own, right? So a big indicator I think folks need to watch is that rents and so cost to own and rents, right? Those lines ride each other. Usually there's a savings to buy a house. People drop out of renting to save to buy. Okay, right now, if you look at a graph, you could throw one up. Yeah. The cost to buy is like way up here. I mean, it's like, it's not even the neighbor of what it costs to rent.
It's way bad.
It's
52. Last cycle was 52%. But it depends on the data. Right? It's bad.
So listen though, when the juice runs out of the engine, okay, when the last of these buyers, there's not enough common sentiment either. Like we had this weird common sentiment that finally showed up to buyers in 22, end of 22, the fall, when the rates go up, the interest rate went from 3.75 overnight to wasn't long before it was 7.3. It peaked right at the end of 22, and everybody was like, I think there was part of it was like sticker shock and unaffordability because it's purely my pre-approval is now garbage because my interest rate's way higher. Yep. But then there was this other pattern of knowing that something's going on, and there was this, is this the end kind of thing? And I think some of that leaves people with the bag, man. And so we're coming to that, man, where some of these markets are going to, I think 2024 could be the year where it's like you have that sentiment re-arrive. Right. Because there's just a piece of each market that's still functioning well. Yep. Yeah. At least this is where I'm at. Okay.
That's a great freaking point. And that's why I'm so glad you're here, Jared, because that's the problem with the industry. People will take the data and run with a narrative. It's very rare where you get people looking at both sets of data where, oh, this one looks good, this one doesn't look good. But we all know it's unaffordable. We all know how toxic, but they just won't talk about that, man. They won't talk about how bad and how toxic and how emotional the transaction is. I hear what you're saying about the savvy consumer, but brother, as a loan officer, I'm just like, Jesus, man. Most people, it's bad. They overexert themselves. They're maxing things out. And so I question how many people that purchased during 2021 can even afford to keep home ownership now that the property tax is 20% higher and they just got that new car because they got lucky enough to have a 3% rate. I mean, this is crazy, Jared. This is crazy what's happening right here, man. It really is.
So where I live too. So you got to understand, I think what I'm telling you is that the cost to buy a home being so much higher, that is an uncommon historic inversion. It's not supposed to be that way. Okay. There's only a few markets where it's insanity all the time, like LA, that stays that way because there's so much money that says, I don't care. That it's called dumb money, right? That's where it lives. Yeah. Okay. The point I'm making is this isn't, I go to any market in Florida that it doesn't stay this way. Okay. So at the same time, here's the interesting thing is if you really start having, the degree of everybody says, hey, how bad can home prices get? watch the degree of rent erosion, right? We started to see it kind of get a handle. Right now, the Fed still has a handle. Like the inflation isn't still under control. And so rents aren't really, I don't think, tracking where Powell would want them, which means like we're seeing shelter costs hold the whole thing up still too high, which means higher for longer on rates. Honestly, if it stays a pattern, we see another, right? Like we just had a recent report at like 3.1. I mean, if we stay above his targets consistent, I mean, could he raise them again? I don't know. People aren't believing that, but like
He could.
I'm sitting there going, yeah, I'm saying, what is going on? It's stuck. But you got to understand too, in the multifamily market, a lot of what everybody looked at was just look how hot resale homes got over this pandemic period. Multifamily has been constructed all over this country in
100%
mega mess. You have major supply coming to key markets
this year.
Texas has got a few. Yes. You had a bunch come last year. You got way. I know people in where I live. They're like, there's freaking apartments everywhere.
Dude,
I'm like, just wait.
In my own local market that I keep my viewers in a box in Kingwood. Dude, the rental market in a matter of weeks, and I'm going to sell my rental house probably in spring. Like, I just don't want to be a landlord, man. I'm going to sell that crap, get out of it. But my rental market, Jared, we probably have 2 to 3 times more inventory right now than we did this time last year. And the rent is like 15%, 20%, depending on the listing, of course. It's way cheaper. So I'm like, man, I don't like being a landlord anyways. Let me just cash in on that equity. And there's going to be a lot more people that follow my suit because a lot of people have 2, 3, 4. In Florida, they just convert your second home, sell that son of a gun, cash in on your money. And so like, dude, the rental market is key. I think, man.
So think about this. You're having 2 things happening at the same time. So this is how it works, folks. Your rent gets pressured downward. Your prices are going to continue to get pressured downward because where I'm at, Orlando, Austin, many of these markets have a record number coming to your back door right now. We're just saying, hey, it's way cheaper right here. Get this 1,500 square foot luxury townhouse, way cheaper than the other, so there's a massive saving. I told you off channel, like I sold my house believing, hey, this is crazy high. Like, I can't believe how much this moved in 2 years. I'm done. Like I was up 75%. But from 2019 to like 21, I was like,
that's crazy, dude.
I'm like, I can't. I told my wife, I was like, look at this tax-free primary res money. Like, so the point I'm making though, my house that I live in now, if I were to purchase it, my mortgage and everything included would be about $6,800 a month. I pay $3,800 a month to live. It's a big house in the Central Florida area.
Are you renting,
nice
Jared?
And I'm renting. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm renting, Jared. I'm renting. Did you know
I own
that?
real estate, but I don't live in it. That I own.
That's great because I won't do it. I won't do it.
But here's let me say something real quick fast. So you have now coming downward pressure on rents. Rents have to get your actual cost to own a home. Your buying cost has to drop and actually come back in line with history, right? The inversion won't last. So the inversion breaks. So eventually, like and the fascinating thing, follow me on this. Purchase cost way higher than rent. Rent with more supply coming in 24. I think there's no other way to understand this. Continue down pressure on rent, which means, hey, all the buyers that you're going to soften all this first and mid-range buyer. They're like, I'm out. Like, why would I pay $6,800 a month to own this house? And I just pay $3,800 a month for it. At the same time, I'm also believing this isn't going to be sustained. Now you have the investors getting hurt too. So you now have rents coming where they're going to see some projection, more of that 10, 20% fall off, maybe more in terms of what you can collect because it's going to, and I'm hearing it in my area. I heard a person say, I did what I did, sold their house, went to a rental, got in at a $3,000 a month rent on something really nice. He goes, Jared, they're not even renting them for barely $2,500 now. And it's like a year went by, so it's like, so you're going to have, people in Florida particularly have a lot of the deck stacked against them because you have more of these apartments coming in our state because everyone's ready for this. There's huge multifamily growth. That's going to drive rents down. At the same time, you're going to take buyers away from those properties that would purchase because it's way cheaper to rent. That gap's getting bigger and bigger. It's like, why would I buy? It's just stupid. It's just shelter cost. People wake up and they say, it's just shelter costs. I'm going to do the right thing right now. This is dumb. At the same time, you have investors losing revenue. Their annual income is dropping. And then we have some insurers this year saying, oh, get ready for 30% more. Get ready for 40% more. You're already paying $6,000 a year, $700 a month for your insurance.
My God.
It's going to $800. It's going to $900. It's going to $1,000.
God, man.
You know, and then in Florida too, you have such a massive catch up in our taxes. You know, so there are people that will all of a sudden see a 30, 40% jump in their rental. The property that they've been paying taxes on, you know, was $3,000 a month, and now it's
because like
$4,800.
in Texas, when we have the rentals, right, they don't have those same tax shelter and like a homestead. You can't file a homestead on an investment property.
Interesting.
Which protects you from elevated property tax increases. Like my primary residence, if I had one, I can only go up a certain amount. I can fight it. But when it's my investment property, you're at the mercy of the county, and they will tax you. So not only do you have that fixed income problem, you also have potential investors that didn't understand certain fundamentals. Because I think, Jared, and correct me, maybe you know the stats, like of the last 3 or 4 years, the experience of investors has been in like the trash can. Like there's just no experience. It's just like simple math. If I buy a house, it's going to go up in value and I'm going to make money in rent. But I think it's like anywhere from 2 to 5 years is the average, or something crazy like that. It's just and what I'm trying to say is they have not gone through a cycle. And I've also talked to like a lot of realtors are still buying STRs. And the first question I ask every single person that tells me they bought an STR, can you cash flow long term? And almost every time it's no. I can only cash flow short term. And I'm just like, well, maybe you shouldn't have got the 9% interest rate. Maybe you should have let the quantitative tightening finish. Because what you just did is you put yourself in a box to where if everything doesn't go perfectly, you lose money now. And I wonder, Jared, how many people, are there out like that? But the other thing with the STRs, we already have bans. Just passed in Dallas. The enforcement got extended. We have it in Las Vegas, New York. But the problem is if enforcement doesn't do anything about it, then they're just going to keep doing it. And so what I think needs to happen is I think they need to make an example out of some of these people that are in these metro areas that are not supposed to be operating STRs. Now, last thing, Jared. We were talking 52 minutes. My God, I know we're going to probably have a lot more collaborations, man. The conversation.
I'm happy to.
I'm blown away. I wasn't expecting this level of dialogue, so I really appreciate it. But before we go, man, I want to get you out of here. Can you give any last words to whether they're in Florida or not? To a consumer that has lost hope, they're bitter, they're resentful, they're like, this is BS for me. What type of hope, if any, can you give to that consumer?
Yeah, I think hope is always a frame of reference mentally, right? So, it's like the idea that anybody ever said to you that if you're in America, the poorest poor in America are rich to 75% of them, right? That's a perspective thing. So let me, I would say that my first leading thought is that you got to understand that when we had our market start to soften last time, we went from my first alarm bell that I saw in the last market was 2006. I remember I was in the southeast part of Vegas. I just wrapped up showings for some buyer. And I remember the bell going into my head saying, this is insane that they're spending the X on this. And then it wasn't until 2012 till it was a bottom. Okay. So that was a 6-year span of time. Really, that market was a 5-year run. It was a 7 to 12 5-year run where it actually cycled. We hit our peak by all accounts in June of 2022. So you look at most any marketplace, it's very, very top end. Like you could call it, that is the top of the roller coaster. That's the peak before the falls, or from wherever it went from there was June, July of 2022. All right. We're sitting in the beginning of 2024. And the other factors involved are just very different. So, I told you a moment ago that, and I think we all know this, that this particular cycle was created. It was created because of just free and easy money, right? A lot of capital and a lot of resources just shoved in the market overnight. And like I told you, the winners, this is the fascinating thing. The winners that took advantage of all that money and then placed it in homes where we are, the equity's there. So the reality is you don't have to sit there and stare at foreclosure notice or the numbers. Oh, it's only moving. The delinquency is so low. Yes. So what? delinquencies are actually going to come from after June 22. The people that bought in late 22 and 20, these FHA buyers that aren't going to be able to sell their house and they're going to get forced, like their Apple Card. Those are where you're going to see post peak trouble, I think. But the actual deflation, because I understand the whole economy is basically, you almost think of this push that ran everything up. Jerome Powell's position is a reversal of that. It's basically siphoning out, basically pulling back resources by allowing price to correct. And once price starts to settle, the capital that went into that, it disappears from existence, so to speak, right? Because it was all money that came into the system, bigger down payment, bigger cash to fight and buy a house with. All that can just, I can't get as much as I want. I got to sell now. We're already seeing the trends, man. Those people, like the amount of 3 and 4% percentage of mortgages that are under a 4% rate, every month that slice just keeps changing and changing where people are giving them back. And those might be given back because they're refinancing some of that equity back out. A lot of people in older brackets where I'm from, they're borrowing. But my mentality is like, those of you that are feeling like, this stinks. It's, you got to understand you're in the first couple innings of from the peak, and some, these markets, like I said, different markets are going to react in different ways. And ultimately, it's hard to know how this plays out, what time frame, when does maximum unaffordability, I should say, when does that run its course where everybody's like, this is insane, I'm out, and the consensus grows and the inventory grows with it and price slashing grows with it, and the woes that follow, it starts to happen as things change. But you just, who would have, unemployment's creeping up, right? Like the more unemployment grows, we know inventory goes with it, and ultimately, it'll be fascinating to see exactly how the story ends, because I think a lot of us watching, I think diminished hope comes from the fact that a lot of us thought recession would hit a little faster and a little harder.
100%.
It's like an accident in slow motion. That's the best way to describe it.
I think this is a great answer. So basically, better things to come. Hold on, stay patient. Just because the recession didn't happen in 2023, like so many of us thought, I thought that, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So be on your guard, but educate yourself. And honestly, Jared, we're at an hour, man. I wasn't even planning, but this is just a great dialogue. So I just try to shut up. We'll definitely do more in the future. Guys, do me a favor, comment below. Let me know if you appreciated his perspective. Don't forget to go to his channel on YouTube. Show him some love. Say that Real Estate Mindset sent you. And other than that, guys, if you're out there investing in real estate, we wish you luck and we hope you win.